Six to order. I don't see anyone from the public there is for item 2. Let's go to item 3 then, which is comments from directors and the president. Any comments from anyone?
Just a question on page 5. It looked like we saw another spike in water service repair last month. Just curious what that was.
What page is
Page 5 of the
Oh, fine.
packets.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing rings a bell. Look it up.
Okay.
I'm doing that right now.
Mike, I've got a question on it, not that one, but sanitary sewer repair. That's been dragging for months and months, and I see we're now 88% under budget.
That's- Now we get to the county, and I have a comment. They send it back and then we get back in the queue, so we just gotta wait our turn. The last time they sent it back, they wanted a separate traffic control plan for each different location of our repair. This is absolutely absurd, but we did it. But we're back in the queue now, waiting for their view comments.
Broken record.
Yeah. And how about water service repairs? That was another one.
We had about
That's
14,000,
Aaron with this, yeah.
about 14,000. One repair was at Crossvine and one in North Millbend. Kind of all I know.
Oh, yeah, I saw the trucks out there. One day. Okay, thank you. Moving on, the consent agenda. We have 5 items there today. Does anyone have,
What about item 4?
we just did item 4.
Was that item 4?
Was
We
item
were
4.
discussing something else.
Do you have something? you wanted
I
to
didn't
comment?
hear a specific request. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we skipped item 4.
Yeah.
To be honest with
Well,
you.
no, that's,
Let's see if that-
excuse me, you are correct. Jeannie, any,
I'll keep him honest.
nothing, okay, that will move to the consent agenda. I've got to get a stronger pair of glasses, is what the problem is. We've got 5 items on the consent agenda. Does anybody have any comments on them or want to move anything? We have 6. Yeah,
5 through 10. 6. No,
6, yeah, we do have 6. No comments?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as provided.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to the regular agenda. Item 11, receive the San Jacinto River Authority. That going to be you today, Mike, or Chris? Chris, okay.
Mike wants to cover. I appreciate that, no.
He's had his chance.
Self a break.
He's heard it a few times.
He's heard it enough times. We do not have an update on the infrastructure funding or the strategic plan. What I do have is prior to the meeting, 2 documents were passed out. This bound document here. This is the 10-year project plan, right? So we present it every year and modify it every year as needed, so on and so forth. This is the detail behind this other document that you have. This is the high level summary that I'm going to be going off of today. Not going to reference this because there's some fake half a day or so.
Yeah.
This is yours to keep, take, write up, ask questions about, so on and so. So I'm going through this. If there's any questions, let me know. A lot of this stuff is just the same stuff we present every year, so I'm going to try to shoot through to get to the.
Is the wastewater treatment in here, Chris?
It is.
Okay, and congratulations on your 13 years, by the way.
Thank you. 13 long years.
Good job for us.
Actually, interestingly enough, Ed and I have the same anniversary, just obviously different years. Why I can remember it. So, going on to this document. The first 3 pages, pages 2, 3, and 4, talk about level of service. What I've done is on page 2, I've included headlines from around the state of Texas. A lot of cases, these are where there are boil water notices, water outages lasting several days, aging infrastructure concerns, so on and so forth. I've put these in there because our 10-year project plan is a proactive approach to keep us out of headlines. That way it's status quo as you go along, water's always there, wastewater goes away. Nature of the beast, you're always gonna have some bump in the nights, but not nearly as much, nothing to push on the headlines. Page 3, so something we've used before to talk about the level of service. We want to stay to the far right. Page 4 talks about the level of service that's been experienced. Award-winning facilities, mud side and river authority side. Very limited to no interruptions in all cases, muds and river authority side. Of course, going to the right-hand side, one boil water notice in 50 years. That was, one house had one issue with a backflow printer 3, 4, 5 years ago, and so the entire Woodlands had to go under a boil water notice.
That was a homegrown plumbing effort.
It was.
Okay.
Yeah, molds, backflow preventers, leaks, everything, yeah.
Yeah.
Big file.
Chris, quick question. You don't mention best tasting water in Texas in here as far as I see.
Yeah, unfortunately, we did not win that last week at Texas Water.
Oh, okay.
We submitted GRPs and Woodlands, and the city of Houston beat us.
The city of Houston. Oh.
But Texas Water was hosted in Houston, and that's the only thing they won, so.
Kind
of like video, I think it was a pity.
Contract.
We gotta give them some.
Well, they also didn't want us to sweep all the awards.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's true. We won 7 awards. 6 or 7 awards.
Congratulations, my God, it's great.
So pages 5, 6, and 7 talk about how projects are determined. It's basically kind of a nutshell on page 6. This isn't just a willy-nilly, we think this is gonna break Dockville. We do plan out using asset management strategies. Page 6 shows that, where we look at the likelihood of failure, consequence of failure, and then a mitigation factor. Now, this is done for single assets, which there's 7,500 in the Woodlands. So we don't look at a 3-mile piece of pipe. We look at each manhole to manhole, what's in between that. So from that equation that you see on the bottom of page 6, we move over to page 7 where we start ranking. So we get this business risk exposure, and then we put them in the little buckets. Once they're in the buckets of just observe and monitor, or the middle one where we either observe and monitor or we start planning replacement, or this last one, then we start actually looking then and saying, okay, is this a single asset that needs to be replaced or a complete rehab? In other words, if I go to a lift station, I need to replace 2 pumps. I don't rehab the entire lift station because 2 pumps are bad. You replace 2 pumps. But if I go to that lift station, I got 2 pumps that are bad, control panels are bad and needs a coating, I rehab the entire lift station. Page 8 is just an overview of the process that we follow for anything design or construction that's over $25,000. There's always a scope of work. There's always RFQs, RFPs, and CSPs put out there. We typically do not do low bid on construction projects. It's low bid, you get what you pay for. So we do competitive sealed proposal, CSP. So it's a combination of cost and quality. In the case of the CSP, the bare minimum we do for cost is 50%. So we definitely factor in cost. It's not like it's 10%, everything else is quality. We can pick anybody. Putting that out there because there are a lot of questions. Okay, page 9 gets into more of the project plan. Left-hand side, wastewater system. The PowerPoint does not cover wastewater too much because everything that we talked about in the strategic plan has been put into the project plan. So I felt that we spent 15 months talking about it, didn't need to spend another 15 minutes or so. On the right-hand side, the water system, the main focus area is going to be the asbestos cement or AC water lines that we've talked about for the last few years. They're approaching 50 years of life, and the service life is about 50 years. Flipping over to page 10, what we started added in is the ask. A lot of times we get to these presentations and there's a lot of information. It's like, okay, what do you need from us? So we've started putting in here 2 asks to show you what we're presenting to you. First ask is to understand the R&R funding needs that are in the 10-year project plan that you're going to see next month in the O&M budget. So page 11 is a summary of the R&R fund, which is a cash funded portion of the project plan. Water system at 38 million, wastewater at 45. Put those together, it's about $83 million over a 10-year period for the R&R cash funded portion. Okay. All of these projects, with the exception of one, are less than a 30-year lifespan. So if we were to bond fund like a well rehabs typically last 12 to 15 years. Your 30-year bonds, you're going to be paying for that for 30 years when it's done and you do it again. So elevated storage tank number 6 is it's the only thing that has a 75 to 100-year lifespan, but we already have majority of the cash on hand. So that's why it's staying in R&R. So to kind of summarize a little bit more on page 12, $83 million is the projected R&R needs for the next 10 years. But we do have $21 million cash on hand. That money is left over from some of the projects that were canceled during the strategic plan, since we're no longer doing like lift station 5 and so on and so forth. So we take the 83 million, reduce it by the 21 million we have on hand, leaves 62 million. 62 million over 10 years, 6 million a year, roughly. So I say all that because we're currently funding in the budget $6 million a year, $6 million a year to R&R. So for the next 10 years, we don't project that the R&R needs to increase. Last year, we were looking at it increasing $500,000 each year until we reached $10 million. One of the reasons it's staying at $6 million is we've moved anything that has more than 30-year lifespan out of cash funding over to bond funding. Asset has 50 plus years, makes sense. You can pay on it for 30 years. Questions on the R&R side? All right. Page 13, ask number 2. At a future board meeting, authorize SJRA to sell debt for water and wastewater capital replacement items. Page 14 goes into a little bit more detail about ask number 2. It talks a little bit about the projects, but also about what is included. Because if somebody says, yes, I authorize you to go replace 48 miles of AC line, what does that really mean? So the bullet points here show what that is for. So program management, preliminary design, survey, geotechnical, final design, construction phase. I mean, everything you can imagine would be included in that same line. Then, of course, on the wastewater side, you have the wastewater bonds for the wastewater strategic plan. Now, what we're looking at is bringing each of the MUDs a supplemental agreement sometime this calendar year. So with the ask, it's not that, hey, we're going to do this next year. We're looking at this calendar year to bring it to y'all. So we can say, y'all can say, yes, we agree with this. Yes, we're good with this. This is the plan we want to follow for the next 10 years.
Chris, will this be before the phase 2 study is published?
Repeat that first part, please.
But you're talking about asking the MUDs for authorization. Will this be, would that be before phase 2 is complete, or when? You said sometime this calendar year,
Likely
and that's due to be completed, what, December?
October, December.
Oh, okay.
This would likely be before that time period.
Okay.
So what we would be looking at is like a not to exceed for the wastewater side.
Okay, that's,
Yeah,
okay.
so it's not going to dictate, it's going to be a 5 MGD plant and this and that. It's going to be in general terms, but the wastewater side not to exceed this. number.
Okay. Yeah, so there's the safeguard language in there.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So pages 15, 16, and 17 talk about the AC water lines. Some of this is stuff we talked about before, but page 15 on the right-hand side is the age profile for the AC lines. AC has a service life of about 50 years. You can see it was installed in 1973 originally, going to about 1984, 1985 timeframe. So some of that early pipe in the mid 70s is at 50 years now. And so what we're looking to do is start with that pipe and start replacing it over the next 12 years. So that's 10 years of selling bonds, but 12 years of construction, because you need the money before you go to. On the left-hand side, what you see are just some of the high-level concerns related to AC pipe. It's very susceptible to ground movement, not so much subsidence that far down, but in a lot of cases, what we're talking about is when you go from hot to dry, wet to, dry the ground. Page 16 shows a map. The colored lines are all the AC water lines in the woodlands. They're also broken up by phases. So each different color is a different phase that you'll see in the project plan of AC water line replacement. The green line to the right, that runs up and down Groveman's Mill. It's kind of hard to see on here. That's the town center water line project that is currently under design. Page 17 shows the break history from 2015 to current. Now, what you're looking at, you don't see a whole lot of 20 and 30 breaks per year of these lines. But what you're seeing is any of those numbers, that's a large transmission line that's been taken out of service. There's a potential in all those cases for folks to not have water, depending on the redundancy of the system. Pages 18 and 19 are more AC pipe related items. Page 18 talks about our recommendations. The only thing we haven't chatted about is towards the bottom, the fourth bullet there, monitor the Woodlands Parkway line. The Woodlands Parkway line is a PVC line that runs on Woodlands Parkway from Kirkendall to 2978. It's installed in about 2002, so give or take 20 years old. And for about 5 years, we had 3 to 4 breaks per year, and people were out of water the whole night. Knock on wood, the last 18 months, we haven't had any breaks. So what we've done in the project plan is take that line and push it out to about 2033. And so we're just going to watch it and observe it. Our hoping is that we've caught all the bad pieces and it's not going to break anymore, and you'll continue to get the rest of the 50-year life out of it. But if it does continue to break and have more issues, then we'll let you know and see if y'all want to bring it forward.
Okay, Chris, is there any reason that you discovered on why that line breaks at AC?
Poor construction, poor installation. There's lack of bedding, so there's no sand in the bottom, so it moves very easily.
Yeah.
Also, when it was installed, it looks like they use the backhoe bucket to push it together, so all the joints are kind of cattywampus.
Do you have different contractors on different portions of that?
Don't know it. We've looked back to see it was installed by the developer
Mhm.
20 years ago, and records aren't always that good. So, yeah. All right, so moving to page 20. Page 20 shows the summary of the long-term financing. I'm trying to use long-term financing instead of bonds. There could be chances for grants, there could be loans, there could be bonds. So long-term financing for the water system over the 10-year period, 230 million. Wastewater side, 320 million. Wastewater side includes the strategic plan that you see up there, which is the biggest number. Conveyance optimization, which was also part of the strategic plan. The gravity main rehab was originally cash funded, but it has a 50-year lifespan. Moved it to be bond funded. That way you can pay it out. Water side's everything we chatted about, with the exception of water well number 40. This is a new well to the system, but that's only because we're looking to take out 2 to 3 wells from the system that are aged out, reaching into their service life. So we're looking to take 3 wells out, add 1 back in. So reducing the number of wells overall, but still maintaining redundancy.
Do you know where it's going to be located?
This time we don't, but we're looking at EST 6, which is to be installed Egypt and Research Forest, far west Woodlands. That way flow downhill if needed.
Yeah.
Will be completed in the Jasper.
Jasper for sure.
Chris, have we started the eminent domain on the wastewater treatment plant one site yet?
So we have a program/project manager to oversee the entire group that's doing it, and RFQs went out yesterday, I believe, or the day before for survey, legal, somebody else there. All the whole team that you need to do that, the lawyers and all that, we have to go out for an RFQ because it's over 25,000. So that's on the street now. We're hoping to kick it off June, maybe July at the latest. Get there. So page 21 is the entire picture. This is something over the years we've shown you bits and pieces of it, but this year's project plan is everything we can think of and know of for the next 10 years that is needed is on page 21. So what you're looking at is a total of 632 million and change. There is $21 million cash on hand, as well as $25 million of bonds that we already have cash for. So 46 million of that 632 we already have financing for. And last page I have is page 22. What I wanted to show is 632 million is a lot of cash. And the entire system value for the Woodlands is $2 billion. So that's roughly 31% of the system is planned to be replaced over the next 10 years. So then a thought comes up, okay, when does the other 69% need to be replaced? Some of that will be between now and 2050, but the biggest bulk that you're looking at is around 2050. Wastewater plant 2 is going to be 50 years old at that time, as well as some of this PVC that was installed in the 1980s. It will be about 70 years old. You'll want to start looking at it then. So all that to be said, big chunk now, next big chunk about 2050.
We don't have to worry about it.
That's the thing. This is your time, you're right. The other part, Eric will talk a little bit later in the GM report about the PR items that come with these as well. Don't want to steal his thunder too many times. That is all I have. Everything else in this document is just reference material. Have any questions? I'll be glad to answer.
Great presentation.
Yeah, very impressive.
Thanks again, Chris. As usual, good job. Has that finished the,
That's all I have unless y'all have any questions on anything. We'll turn that over to Ed.
okay. Receiving, item 12, receive update on SJR Spring Creek detention study.
Page it is 37 through 43. Information related to that, but cut to the chase, May 2nd at the Woodlands Township, 6 to 8 p.m. is the next, what is it called, open house?
Public meeting.
Public meeting, where we discussed, that's coming up.
What is the estimated total cost of that project at this point? Just round numbers.
Round numbers, 200 million.
And how much would the MUDs pay?
Unknown because your contract only takes it through feasibility stage.
Yeah,
If you stayed with it, if you all were the only ones under contract for it, 200 million.
It's a discount.
Chump change.
You asked.
No, it's pertinent to a later
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah. Okay. My favorite part during legislature's in session, receive the attorney's report, and Brian's got a thick stack of paper there. I'm worried.
Well, some of this is for y'all, some of it's not. So, as you mentioned, yes, we are in the throes of the legislative session. Before I touch on that, we're going to mention a letter that we got from a insurance company that is handling a claim for a resident in the district. You should have a copy of that letter. The insurance adjuster was claiming that the line, there's a private line from the district's sanitary sewer line that goes to the person's home was hit by TACUS, and we talked a lot about TACUS. And the homeowner or the insurance company approached TACUS, and TACUS said, it's not our fault. We called 811, which of course is not the right answer for two reasons. One,
Number?
yeah, it's a private water line, so that's certainly not covered by 811. That's for public lines. And number two, 811 only addresses what is called tier 1 facilities or class A facilities, which, fiber optic lines, natural gas, things like that. Water sewer lines fall under the tier B or class B. And so this comes up from time to time that somebody will hit one of our lines and say, well, we called 811. Well, that doesn't cut it for our facilities. We don't get notified through that system under the statute. So they have to contact us separately, and we've had to educate contractors about that over time. So I don't think it's our responsibility. We prepared the letter, sent it back over to them, got a confirmation received from their adjuster today saying, thanks for the letter. So we'll see if there's anything else that comes out of that. So that's that. Any questions?
Last month, we talked briefly about the proposal to eliminate the powers of the flood district in Harris County. What happened to that? Die in committee?
No, so you're talking about House Bill 3820, I believe.
That's the one.
Harris County Regional Water Authority. Yeah, and so that one's been referred to committee, Natural Resources, but it was not included. They had a hearing yesterday. It was not included on the list of bills that had a hearing yesterday. I think they may be having another hearing today, but I've been in board meetings and haven't been able to see the notice if there was a hearing today of what was included on that. But it's not dead. I mean, we're getting late. We're starting to get late in the session. The House is moving. Or what I was going to touch on today is the House is moving pretty slow. We've got a lot of bills introduced, around 8,000, which is a 15% increase over the last session. And there hasn't been very many bills passed. As of last week, I think there were less than 30 that have been passed out of the House. So it's starting to get down to crunch time on hearings and moving bills from chamber to chamber. We're there monitoring a whole bunch of bills, but the House has definitely been moving at a slower pace. So I wouldn't say that just because that bill hasn't had a hearing yet, that it's not, that it couldn't get one. I am in contact with Eric about that bill as well as some others, because I know that there's some interest by some of the Woodlands directors about that particular bill. That answer your question on that one?
It does.
Okay. Other bills I've touched on. Again, this is not exhaustive when you got 8,000 of them floating around out there. But there's a bill out there relating to qualifications for directors, and it would remove the qualifying characteristic of renters. To be able to serve on a board, you have to own property subject to taxation. So, if you rented a house or rented an apartment and didn't own property in the district, you would no longer be qualified. So that was introduced by Representative Swanson. Yes, sir.
Right. Does that apply to the Lone Star Groundwater District as well?
No, this is for MUDs.
Just from us, because, as you may or may not know,
Oh, yeah.
Gary Dent was seated very, very quietly and very silently,
Yes.
and he does not appear to be a property owner.
No, and their statute is very vague about what, I think there's an argument to be made about whether you even have to live in the precinct that you're being.
They said you did during the election.
Right, but if you read the language, it's not
It's not
the statute. It's not very clear about what the qualifications are. It just says these different areas have the right to vote for directors, but it's not clear about the residency to me when I looked at it. But anyway, there's a bill out there, House Bill 1793, that would impact MUD qualifications. It has been voted out of committee, and so we're waiting to see if it passes on the House side and then what happens on the Senate side. So that one's out there. A few other ones. There's a bill, House Bill 3507, that deals with the thresholds for construction contracts when they have to receive competitive bids and when they have to be publicly advertised. You may recall several years back, the threshold went from 50,000 before you had to publicly bid up to 75,000. And that's where we still are today. Of course, there's a lot of inflation that's happened. So this bill would change the threshold for when you have to publicly advertise from 75,000 to 250,000. And then between 75,000 and 250, you'd still be required to get 3 competitive bids, but you wouldn't have to go through the public advertisement process. Anything under 75,000, you would just get, you could get 1 bid. So we're watching that. It did pass committee last week, and we're waiting to see how that one shakes out as well. Another bill, there's House Bill 3811. It was passed out of committee that would broaden the ability of districts to hold their meetings remotely. We all got a little spoiled by the flexibility that was provided during COVID. And then once the governor's emergency order expired, then that flexibility ended and we went back with the legacy requirements under the Open Meetings Act that only allows for remote meetings in very limited, just about emergency circumstances. So this bill would broaden the ability to have remote meetings. Remain to be seen if it goes all the way, but it has gotten out of committee. So that one's interesting to kind of keep track of. Another bill that actually has passed out of the House, out of the Senate, Senate Bill 175, would prohibit the use of any public funds for lobbying efforts. So that has been introduced a few times. I think this is the third time. It has, like I said, it's passed the Senate. It's going over the House. Don't know how it's going to fare over there, but that's a pretty consequential bill because if passed, no public funds could be used for lobbying. And so it would just be private interest that would be able to.
Yeah. How would that affect the lobbying effectively that you guys do? It would, I realize you don't collect money specifically for it, but you do get paid by.
We represent some clients in advancing bills, district clients and landowners in creating districts. So yes, we do.
You haven't done any for us, have you? Any of the months in the Woodlands?
Not in a while, not in a while. We've worked with the township on legislation in the past. So we have been involved in lobbying efforts in the Woodlands. Also, the work that we do to support AWBD and their legislative efforts, it's to be seen, but it's possible that prohibition on use of public funds could flow all the way to dues to organizations such as AWBD and would prohibit them from being able to engage in lobbying efforts. So it's a pretty wide-ranging or pretty consequential bill. I think initially it had grown somewhat out of this antagonistic or somewhat adversarial relationship between the state and a number of the municipalities in Texas. And TML is, got a very strong presence up there, and they've lobbied against some of the state efforts. And so this would certainly put a stop to that. But it would certainly impact governmental entities' ability to go and have presence there without having to have actual elected officials or staff go and advocate directly. So,
which is always harder.
Yes,
You don't know the
well,
people.
I mean, these committee hearings can last 12+ hours, and you got to bring a sleeping bag. I mean, you got to be able to commit a lot of time to go and be there. So, so that one's out there. There's a bill that would require for elections that relate to bonds to only be on a November uniform election date, not in May. So, I don't think you are going to be having a bond election, but
Yeah, but that makes sense.
but that's out there. Let's see. Also, a bill that we're hopeful gets pulled back. It looks like it has been pulled back at least temporarily. That would prohibit special districts from exercising their power outside of their geographical boundaries. And, we've had any number of projects that are regional in nature that may extend beyond a particular district's.
Would the detention study be one of those?
Yes. Yes, but like I said, it has been temporarily pulled back. It was scheduled for a hearing and that got canceled, or the sponsor pulled it back. So we'll see if that one still continues to move forward. There was another bill that I had visited with Eric a bit on that relates to a new requirement to inspect fire, where it would require the inspection of fire hydrants, because it would require notification to fire stations or fire departments if there was either a planned or unplanned outage. Especially on the unplanned side, you don't know necessarily what hydrants would fall into that category if you're not going out there inspecting them. And we have hundreds, if not thousands. Fire hydrants, that would be a significant additional expense to have to go. You pretty much have to inspect them twice a day. So, yeah.
Really?
Yes. So it had a hearing yesterday. I think the sponsor is looking to do a substitute bill, but still pushing that. So we are, we're certainly monitoring that one because that could be a.
Get Chief Buck out there.
Yep. Yep. So that's the 10-cent tour. Certainly not exhaustive, but kind of gives you a flavor of what's going on out there. Happy to answer any questions if y'all have them.
Always enlightening when the legislature is in session. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions at all for him? Okay. Item 14, consider the adoption of resolution concerning developed districts. Now, on this, I have a question.
We are deferring that today.
Okay, because the paper says that we are not a deferred district if you look at the check marks.
Correct. Correct. And that's why we're deferring. We need to get some additional information from Woodlands Waters GIS folks to make sure that we've got the backup on those numbers. So we're deferring that today.
Okay.
So we'll carry it next month.
Okay, moving on to item 15 then. Discussion regarding consolidation with Woodlands Water Municipal Utility District 1. And let me just give you some background on this. Bob Lilac called me a couple of weeks ago and asked if we were interested in consolidating with Mud 1 again. As most of you will recall, we did have an attempt a couple of years ago. Was it 2 years ago? Yeah.
That's about right. A little over that.
Yeah, well, November two and a half. And the vote lost by a handful of votes. I think it was 15, 20 or something like that. And for most of us, I think we believe that a big part of the problem was the wording in the write-up of the proposal of consolidation of the districts occurring at the same time that people were voting on whether there should be a Woodlands, City of the Woodlands. And I think people who were confused the two and just said, I ain't voting for this, and I'm not sure about this one, but I ain't voting for that one either. And that is probably what scuttled that. What I would like to do is I'd like to get back to Bob after our meeting and tell him what our general feeling is about moving forward once again. In order to keep the discussion organized, what I would like to do is ask each of you, starting with a junior member, what your feelings are about consolidation in general, and then any specific concerns that you might have. So, Mr. Hofstadter, it is your turn.
So generally speaking, I think that consolidation has merit. I think, I supported the Mud 1 and Mud 6 efforts previously, and still think that if there's a financial benefit to both MUDs, then it's worth consideration. My current reservations are more about timing probably than anything else. There's obviously a lot of change going on with the Mud 1 board currently. And there's also a lot of discussion regarding development in Mud 6 and Grogan's Mill. And I am cautious of how the priorities of the consolidated board would align with the best interests of Grogan's Mill in particular.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm curious, after watching the Mud 1 meeting, there was a lot of conversation about the time that was invested in the costs associated with the study. For reference, what was the cost of the previous study?
Well, Neil and Bob did most of the work on that.
So it was Frank.
And, but we did have, there's the cost of the election.
Well, yeah.
But I thought, didn't we have a consultant look at it too or something?
I'm just curious about that.
Or we paid some, I thought we
We
paid.
haven't paid anything for that. I think you guys were,
Yeah.
Well, there were legal fees involved in the consolidation, wasn't
Yeah,
That would
that's
be
what I was.
folding into the elections. Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, there was no consulting
I was-
fees or.
Yeah, I'm only asking, there was discussion regarding the study itself, so I was curious what the cost was of that portion of it.
And if I may, at this point, for Eric's benefit, Mud 6 in particular is probably different than most MUDs. Deborah's been president of the Grogan's Mill Village Association 3 times. Aaron is currently president of the Grogan's Mill Village Association. I've been president of the Village Association 8 times. Neil is on the Grogan's Mill Village Board. Neil, Aaron, and I are all associated with the farmers market. On Mud 36, John Ures and Pam Fontenot were Mud Board members. Bob Lilac was a Mud GMV member, so that there's a close-knit feeling about what we do, and we are the way we look at a problem may be different than the way other muds look at it, where they're looking at it strictly as a mud. Okay, Deborah, you're
Well, I mean, I've always been in favor of consolidation because I think it makes more sense to do a consolidation. I know when we did the financial consideration of it, you know, there is some savings. There's more time savings than I think there was dollar savings, but that's, I think, an intangible that has to be considered. So, yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of that. So I just think I think it's the right thing to do, the right approach.
Neil.
Mixed feelings on this, having gone through the process. I think in principle, it's a good concept, but the methodology of achieving the necessary structure to have consolidation is, shall we say, wanting. One of the disappointments from last time was Mud 1 acting independently on their tax rate, with the understanding that Lilac and I had was that we would have a consistent tax rate, but they independently went ahead and reduced their tax rate substantially, which would have made it a bit challenging to match that rate from where we were at the time. And given the nature of what we're looking at, of infrastructure replacement, et cetera, particularly in Mud 6. So once bitten, twice shy, and I'm not entirely, although I agree in principle with the idea of consolidation, I don't think it's appropriate at this time.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. Different set of comments, I think. From my standpoint, as a former industrial business person and current residential retired business person, I like to look at the numbers and have the numbers speak for themselves. I always had an issue with the soft numbers associated with the savings and the consolidation as opposed to the hard numbers. I've always made business decisions off of hard numbers, soft numbers, such as time reallocations, as opposed to headcount reduction, to me are very soft and very hard to justify. And that was my rationale then, and probably my same thought process on anything going forward.
Okay. For my own, as Ron can verify, I think I was the first person to propose consolidation. I think he looked at me very much askance when I did. And I think there should be one mud in the Woodlands. I mean, there's no doubt. Now, it has to come in some phases as we get the tax rates equalized. So there probably should be 3 muds maybe at this point. However, in Mud 6, at this particular point in time, I have several concerns that would say I would propose that we defer it for a couple of years anyway. One is we have a very uncertain situation in what is going to happen in development. Mud 1 has a lot of commercial property that can be developed along Grogan's Mill between North Millbend and South Millbend, and in the Grogan's Mill Shopping Center parking lot. And Aaron and I meet with Jim Carmen fairly regularly. We know what their plans are. We know that there will be apartment houses. And we'll know that there'll probably be a call for some more money. And we'd want to see that information first. I am also somewhat concerned about the property adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant that is going to be picked up by extraterritorial jurisdiction, since that will all be put the treatment plant adjacent to property owners in Grogan's Mill Village and in Mud 6 in particular. I am somewhat concerned, as Neil or Aaron was, about the composition of Mud 1 at this point. Helen Bostock and Jeff Long have resigned. And they have not appointed new members yet. Bob tells me he is not going to run again. I think his term goes to 26. It's a little iffy. And at this point, I would propose that we tell Bob that it's something we would like to do in the future, but not right now. And if anybody would like to say yes, no, don't do that, tell them to go.
I'll support that.
I'm in favor of what you're proposing.
Deborah, you agree?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will tell Bob, not at this time. And I'm sure he'll look at the video, so he'll know what the comments are. Okay, thank you.
Just so he doesn't tickle it next month again.
Okay, receive the general manager's report.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just a couple updates for you this month. Just to give you an update on the One Water topic. Township did meet and voted in favor of resurrecting the One Water Task Force, so that's going to be redeveloped in some form. We've had some preliminary discussions with the township to talk about what the focus and goals might be. So that'll need to be developed as we go forward in the next months. So something to look out for. Just a quick update, we did finish our settlement with TACUS, and so we agreed with the settlement. And so we will be doing the pro rata splits for each of the months that were affected for some costs that are still there and then the proceeds that have come in. So
Eric, have they finished their work or are they still in progress?
Still working on Grover's Mill.
When we met with them, essentially, they said they never finished the woodlands completely. They'd like to someday, but right now they're really just finishing up the progress that they had made up to that certain point, and they kind of stopped. So I think there may be a chance in the future that they come in and do some.
It may happen again, but we're covered for now.
Right, you
Okay.
see the trucks all over the place. They're kind of doing more tie-ins of the infrastructure that they put in previously. So not the heavy work that you saw over the last few years.
And I know we can't share absolutely, but was it a fair settlement from the Woodlands water sample?
I guess, how to describe that
It
is,
was confidential, so just.
yeah, I'm not gonna get into the numbers. I will just say that the position that we last, their last offer was amenable to where we wanted to be. Both financially and I don't know how much.
Going forward.
Right. We feel good about where we ended up under the circumstances.
Thank you.
In your packet, I believe on page 54, there's a summary that we received from Montgomery County Appraisal District to give some insight into some changes in their salary structure. Our understanding is that the changes were more alignments of positions and that there is no bottom line effect for the budget. So no changes there. Did want to point out some years of service recognition for a couple of employees, one of which is Marine of 25 years for Woodlands Water Agency.
Wow, congratulations.
Maureen, I believe you've done a good 25 years of service. I just want to know why Jim wasn't prosecuted for violating child labor laws.
And then another employee, Tony Rendon, in our field supervisor, is 41 years.
Wow,
It's been a
he was a baby.
long run.
Yeah,
I want to point out a few articles that are in the packet as well. There's one on lead service lines. That's going to be a topic that you're going to be hearing about over the next year or so as we tackle the lead and copper EPA rules. And then there's one on PFAS, which is some chemicals that are starting to make headlines that we need to think about. And then just overall, there's some things in the packet as far as the strategic communication plan and what John's doing as it's related to that. And then just a couple other items. The Public Education Committee will be meeting next week on the 26th. As Chris mentioned, Obviously, as you just heard, there's a significant amount of infrastructure changes that will be coming down the pipe over the next decade or so. So we feel like it's pretty important that we get the word out to the public. There will be most likely a pretty significant public education campaign. We're working with SGRA and possibly an outside entity to help kind of formalize how that looks, how that campaign looks. So we'll be working on that. And then finally, in the trustees meeting last week, the personnel committee did hear and recommend to the trustees, which the trustees voted in favor of, the adjustment in the holiday schedule for WWA. That is the holidays that WWA recognizes. And so in the result of that is in 2023, we'll be adding Veterans Day, which is in November. And then we will keep the floating holiday that we have. And then in 2024 and beyond, we will add MLK, President's Day, and Veterans Day, and we will remove the floating holiday. And so that will essentially net out
Us too.
a recognized holiday schedule from 10 to 12 per year. And then that will put us more in alignment with the area-wide municipalities, one of which obviously is SGRA, who's also at 12. And then there's a number of others, Oak Ridge and South McGurney County, and a lot of others that we looked at.
Reasonable.
So that's all I have for the report.
Thank you, sir. Trustees report is next, Mr. Gainer.
Well, rather than go through everything that Eric has covered, my only addition to the Public Education Committee meeting on the 26th of April is that the draft of the RFP is being sent out for review, so that there's going to be some meat to be discussed, particularly in scope of work and so forth. That will be the critical agenda item for that particular meeting. There is one other matter, the trustee agenda.
The last item?
Yeah, the agenda item for May.
Yes, I was going to ask about that. And matter of fact, that is another reason that I am somewhat concerned about consolidation. Is the Board of Trustees has started separating into two groups. And if we did give up a trustee, we would be giving up a vote, I think, of the rational people versus the ones that are trying to take over.
Would you like?
What did Mr. Smith want to do?
In this particular, Mr. Smith did not go to Washington. However, he did go to the SJRA meeting up in on the lake. So you've probably read what's here. And the claim was made that there was a conflict in what trustees voted for and what the SGRA board voted for, or at least as far as I can make out. So knowing that this was going to come up as a question, I thought I'd better be prepared for it. And so the best way of doing that is to go through the timeline. And the particular first meeting that's referred to is March 8th, Woodlands Water Trustee meeting, which was video recorded, and the relevant timestamps for the discussion on the item 9, which related to the use of excess funds for replacement of a generator and associated equipment at the elevated storage tank, number 5, and then the balance was to be used for a rate study. I mean, I've got that. Okay. So in the minutes of that in the agenda of that March 8 meeting, item 9 says, consider an act on the SGRA FY 2022 excess funds pages, and the reference material is the memorandum from Chris to Woodlands Water, discussing this along with the rules concerning customer refunds, right? So that's now the Board of Trustees voted unanimously that SJRA retain the funds and use them for the purposes described. Okay. So going through the timeline, March 23rd, the SJRA board directors met, and there's a video available for that. And the agenda item, the item on their agenda was 6B, and that was related to the same matter already approved by the Woodlands Water Board of Trustees. And the video timestamp for that discussion on that particular item is 47 minutes and 18 seconds to 50 minutes and 14 seconds. And this was a relatively short discussion. It seemed to me more of a bookkeeping kind of reassessment or looking at excess funds, what could be done as appropriate. And I believe the wording was pretty much the same as it was what we saw here for the memo. That was, so it would appear to me that there is no issue or controversy, and the the trustees and the board of directors were voting consistently on the same item. So now fast forward, well, not so fast, but moving forward to April the 12th, I did do my research. I know that's tough.
I didn't mean to take this long. I just wanted a quick second.
So, well, no, you gotta, if you're gonna be dealing with this kind of nonsense, you gotta do your homework. So April the 12th, we had the Woodlands Water Board of Trustees meeting, and I would refer you to the video recording, dates, timestamp 3 minutes 2 seconds to 11 minutes and 55 seconds, which let's see, you can add up both the meeting times for March 8th and March 23rd, and they will be less than the discussion held on April 12th. So just to put the numbers in perspective. And there was an objection raised on the consent agenda that, as is outlined, there's some kind of conflict stated, but I've already mentioned to you that I don't see any conflict whatsoever. And I refer you to the minutes of the March 8th Board of Trustees meeting. The audit committee recommended that $370,000 identified as excess funds in the FY 2022 audit of the SJRA Woodlands Division not be refunded to the MUDs. The board agreed unanimously. So there are no dissensions whatsoever in regard to the vote. And what is important is that what is voted on is the real deal, not the fluff and words associated with it. The funds were utilized as outlined, as I already mentioned, in the SJRA memo to the audit committee dated March 8, 2023, which we've just discussed. So it's a long way of saying it, but I think the Bard probably said it better 4 centuries ago. I've got to, if you're familiar with Much Ado About Nothing. Why? What's the matter that you have such a February face, so full of frost, of storm and cloudiness? That's Don Pedro in Act 5, Scene 4. And I think that puts it in perspective.
Thank you, Neil. I'm glad I didn't ask you to explain what the problem was with not raising the debt ceiling.
Ah, you would need a cut lunch and a water bag. So be careful what you wish for.
I know. Gene, I'm going to ask all my questions of you in the future. Very quick, very precise, very short. Okay, Counselor, do we have to go into executive session? If we don't have to go into executive session, Are there any items that should be discussed for placement on the next agenda? If there are no items to be placed, we come to item 21. I adjourn this meeting at exactly 2:30. Thank you all.